All right, well, I don't know if you're like me, but I'm very excited that we're more than halfway through February. So today is February 15th, so go ahead and find your less favored cross-legged position and just take a few moments to fine-tune that so that you feel really centered on your sitting bones. You feel as symmetrical as you can with cross-legged position, which will always be a little bit asymmetrical because we have one leg on top and one on the bottom. And then finding your alignment, your shoulders floating in line with the hips, feeling the lift and spread of your chest, the length of the front of the trunk and the back of the trunk, the skull adjusting to sit right over the spine. And then when you've kind of found all of that or sensed it, bring your hands together in front of your heart, close your eyes, point your gaze down. Drop the shoulders. Try to surrender your jaw. And just start to tune in to that radio station of you, particularly the breath channel, the physical body channel, the mental channel, emotional channel. And just listening for what is showing up this morning. Listening for any heartfelt longings, intentions. And just taking enough time that you can align your attention with the here and now. And without losing the lift of the chest, bow toward your own heart. Release your hands. On an in-breath, raise your head. Let your eyes gently come open. And welcome. So we're in a backbending week, and this week I thought it would be fun to focus on our weak points in the backbends. The email I sent out was about the weakest points being the source of the action. So it's the limiting factor. And if we can kind of locate where those are in our own bodies, we can start to bring more power and pleasure to these poses. So I'm actually, well, another thing I wanted to say before we get going is if we were in the studio, this would be one of those classes where we used partners a lot, but obviously that's not an option for most of us. I thought about picking on Sylvia and Vern, but I don't think I'm going to do that. So, so we're going to do it in our own way. And how we're going to do it without partners is we're going to work on 4 poses today. We're going to do them all in a row without warming up and without a lot of detail, just so we can get a baseline for how those poses feel in our body without thinking about the wise actions, without making a lot of adjustments, so that we know kind of where those poses kind of hit us in a negative way. And then we're going to refine them. So the first pose that we're going to do is Cobra Pose. So you can come onto your stomach. So I'm not going to give a lot of instruction for these 4 poses. Hopefully you know enough about the poses, or you can just see the shape of the pose on the camera and kind of mimic it. But just kind of find your hands sitting alongside the rib cage. On an exhale, you're just going to push up into that pose, and inhale, come down. And do it as many times as you can to just kind of start to sense the points in your body that don't feel great, the points that you might notice limit your range of motion, the points that might feel tight or contracted or weak or uncomfortable. And don't make a lot of finely tuned adjustments. Let's do 5 more on our own here. Coming up on the exhale. And just a couple more. And then just come down next time you do. Cross your arms and windshield wiper your legs back and forth just to let that go. So the first 4 poses, we're just going to kind of be more experiential, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty and refine these poses. So we're looking for trouble spots. We're getting a baseline. And so hopefully with Cobra, you sensed a few areas in your body that might be weak. We're going to come onto our backs now for bridge pose. And you can find your way there. Doesn't take long to warm up with all those Cobras. And we want to kind of do the exertion on the exhale. So you're going to be doing these up and down again with your breath, but just set the pose up as you know, walking your heels in. Make sure your toes are in front of your heels. Stretch your arms out so your fingertips are close to your heels. Tip your pelvis, and then exhale, lift your hips. Inhale, come down. On the exhales, you're going to be lifting your hips. Inhale to come down. You don't have to do it every breath. If you need a little rest, you can hold for 1 cycle of breath at the bottom. But just the idea here is just to do as many as you can to kind of get a sense for the baseline pose in your body, the trouble spots, spots that don't feel great or feel limiting or feel weak, or feel like they're preventing us from a deeper experience in the pose. And again, we're going to do about 5 more here. You might also notice little habits in your pose, like the butt clenching every time you lift your hips. Next time you come down, just resting your sacrum on the floor, and you can hug your legs in, holding reclining child's pose, just kind of soothing the back in a bit of a forward bend. And then place your feet down, roll to your side. We'll come into our third of those 4 poses, which is Ustrasana, camel pose. So this is the pose where we kneel. And we're going to be holding the hips for these kind of practice runs. And your feet shouldn't be any narrower or wider than your knees. So your feet are aligning with the knees. Your knees should be hip distance. So a little more open, Sylvia, there. Okay. So on the exhales, you're going to lengthen back. Inhale, you're going to come back up. Don't kill yourself. Just kind of go in and out of these and just to get a feel for as much as you can, like you're a detective gathering information. Notice places that don't feel supported, maybe. That feel a little out of control, places that feel tense. Maybe how your whole body moves as you come in and out of this pose. So get as much information as you can, what your elbows are doing, what your shoulders are doing, what your low back is doing, what your thighs are doing, what are your toenails doing? Are you throwing your head back? Okay, so let's do 5 more. Last one, and even if it wasn't 5, just finish up. And then come into child's pose. Separate the knees, bring your feet together. You can use your arms whatever way you'd like, just make it restful. So if you'd like to use your arms to support your forehead or your hands, do that. Otherwise, you can reach your arms forward if that's comfortable. And take a few moments in this soothing, quieting forward bend. We're going to do a lot of repetitions today, so I just wanted to make sure that we take good pauses between them. Good. And as you feel ready, you're going to make your way to standing for the last pose we're going to kind of workshop today, which is Crescent Pose. Always have to make sure I still have a head when I stand up. We're going to take the hips. The full pose, of course, has the arms elevated. We're going to take the hips. And again, on the exhalation, you're going back. Make sure your feet are hip distance. Exhale, going into the back bend. Inhale to come up. So we'll do about 10 total. So finding your own rhythm here. And just really kind of think about scanning your entire body, just noticing as much as you can. What's your abdomen doing? What are your front ribs doing? What's your butt doing? What are your inner thighs doing? What are your toes doing? Shoulders, back of the neck, your gaze, your temples. Where does it hurt? Where do you feel like you're being bothered or agitated in this pose? How strong do your legs feel? About 3 more. Last one. And when you come up, again, make sure you have hip distance spacing with your feet. Resting Uttanasana. You're just going to come forward. You might need to bend your knees because we've done a ton of back bends already. Grab your elbows or dangle your arms and let your head just kind of be suspended freely from the spine. As you're able to, you can work toward a straighter leg, but this is really just to soothe the back body from the back bending. So don't worry about hamstring stretching today as much as soothing your back. Okay, so as you're ready, you can come up to come down, or you can just come directly down back to Cobra. And if you'd like to, you can, if you find it uncomfortable to have your hips and pelvis on the floor without a blanket, feel free to put a thin layer of blanket where your hips and pelvis would be on your mat. Just make sure it's not bulky so that we don't distort the pose. We're using it for padding, not for elevating really. Okay, so we're going to talk about a few points in this pose. One is, we're going to start with the wrists. So classically, your hands sit near the lowest floating ribs. For some of us who have wrist issues, whatever they might be, that's very uncomfortable, and therefore you're not going to get very far in Cobra Pose. So feel free to slide your hands forward as much as you need to and turn your fingers out. Even if you don't have this issue, I want you to kind of feel it. So slide your hands forward, turn your fingers out 45 degrees, and do 5 exhalations coming up. Keep the elbows close to your sides though. We're not trying to take wide elbows here. So if you have wrist issues, this might be a modification for you. Let's do one more. Good. Now, the next thing we're going to focus on is the shoulders. You can't come up very far if your shoulders are drooping and your chest is contracted. So what I want you to do first is to prop or elevate your chest using either a couple blankets or a block and a blanket, so that we don't have to worry about holding ourselves up for a long time. Then you're going to find your strap. You're going to make a loop that when you put your wrists inside of the loop, your arms are parallel, or another way to say that is your arms are as wide as your shoulders are wide. So if you recall coming into the studio and doing some back bending partner work, we had a day where we had a partner stand above us and hold our shoulders. So this, we're kind of going to mimic that experience without our partners. So sad. So you can thread your hands inside the loop And I want you to turn your palms so they face out. Your wrists are what is touching the strap. Okay, so your palms are facing out, which puts your shoulders in that appropriate position, as if you have a partner that's holding you up here. So the idea is not to jam the shoulder blades together, it's to gently tilt the inner shoulder blades toward your chest without them pinching together. So if you imagine you're looking at your back body, you don't see a bunch of rumpled up flesh between your shoulder blades. Try to smooth that out. Make the action more of a coil than a jamming together. Look forward. And you're just going to stay about 5 breaths. If you can, come down if you need to. Good. Wonderful. Okay. Hopefully you got a little bit of a taste of that. Take your arms out of the strap. We will use this a few times today, so just keep it handy. Help yourself come off those supports. Move them aside and come back onto the padded blanket if you're using that. So the next piece, we don't have propping. We're going to just kind of think about this point of the body. So I want everybody to find where their butt ends and their thigh starts. And you're going to kind of just push there. You don't have to do it on both sides, but just find that location where your buttock ends and your thigh starts. If we can find a way with our own efforts to drive this area into the mat, this is using the power of the legs in a back bend, which is something we often overlook. So we're going to try to really push down that area or be attentive to that area moving toward the floor. As you bring your hands back to Cobra position, and that might mean the wrists forward turned out fingers. So feel free to use that. You're going to do 5 exhales coming up, thinking about that area right under your buttocks, coming toward the floor. More strongly on the exhalation. And this is if we had a partner, they would either be stepping or pushing there. So this is a little more challenging because we have to use our imaginations. We don't have the actual physical pressure. Okay, let's do one more. And now come down and rest. Cross your arms. Rest one of your cheeks. Bend your knees, float the legs side to side. Back bends and twists, we notice if we've ingested anything. Even though I've only had liquids this morning, I'm definitely noticing. So we're going to do that again, but now I want you to bring awareness to your toes. And your objective is going to be to have your small toes pressurized into the floor. So put your hands where they're going to go for Cobra, either classical position or slightly forward, fingers turned out. Bring the small toes into the floor and do 5 exhales coming up with your awareness staying at the toes. But we know in turn, this lifts the inner thighs up to the ceiling, which keeps our thighs centered, which keeps the low back broad. Okay, 2 more. Okay, you're wonderful. Go ahead and clear that away, resting the opposite cheek each time, sweeping the legs back and forth. We have one more experience in Cobra Pose before we move on. So another unusual suspect or less obvious weak point in our back bends is when we back bend, we explode the abdomen. So you're going to do 5 or more. You can go farther if you want, more Cobras, but you're going to have the awareness of, instead of inflating your abdomen when you come out or blasting the abdomen forward, compacting the abdomen toward the back body and drawing the inner front ribs toward the back body. Okay, so you're going to find your hand position. On the exhale, you're coming up and you're trying to pull the abdomen toward the back body and squeeze the inner front ribs together and back. 5 of those, or a few more, or a few less, whatever your rhythm is. I feel so much support to my lower back when I use this action. And like I said in the description of this week, this is different for everybody. What your weak point is different than what somebody else's weak point is. But there's a few that are very common. Okay, so go ahead and come down, cross your arms, bend your knees, and clear that away. Let it go. Okay. Back to bridge. Try not to support your head here. It's a little bit distorting for the cervical spine. Just come straight down on your mat. Have your strap nearby. We're not going to use it immediately, but have it nearby. So like I said earlier, oftentimes in back bends, we overlook the power of the legs. So the first piece of bridge pose that we're going to experience is leg power, amplifying the pose. So go ahead and stretch your arms out. Make sure your heels are close to your sitting bones, your toes are in front of your heels. Second toes align with your heels. And I'm gonna, as you exhale, lift your hips, really stamp into your feet, like step into the feet deeply. So here we go, exhale, step into the feet deeply, like pressurize the feet. Inhale, come down. Exhale, push the feet into the floor. Feel the power of your legs. Feel even the quadriceps when you press into your feet. Okay, now especially the big toes. When we were flipped over, it was the small toes. And now because we're inverted, it's the big toes. So really step into your feet and especially the big toes, which will roll those inner thighs down to the floor the way we want them to go. Let's do 3 more. So you're not coming up and holding, you should be coming up and coming down. Okay, and the next time you're down, rest. And then draw your legs in. Holding here, breathing. You might circle your knees if your back needs that. Good. So another reason we don't get up very high in this pose is because the shoulders round away from the floor every time we lift our hips, and we need them to do the opposite. So you're going to take your strap, and the strap will run right under the buttock line. And again, you're going to be trying to take the palms to face out. So you thread your wrists inside the strap and then rotate the arms until you feel your palms either facing up toward the ceiling or even slightly outward. And this is going to spread the outer upper arms down to the floor. And you're going to also resist your hands apart to keep those shoulders there. Okay, set up your legs, walk the feet in, align the feet. And then go on the exhale, lift. But really think about the shoulders pressing toward the floor to send the hips higher. Inhale, come down. Okay, so do 5 on your own. And you're really keeping attention up in the outer upper arms rolling down to the floor, the inner upper arms lifting toward the ceiling. And notice how that might send those hips a little bit higher. You get a little more power there. One more. Good. Go ahead and rest and leave your arms where they are. You can widen your feet and then just let the knees drift from side to side. They're moving to the same side at the same time. So we're going to put that together because we don't have anything more for this pose. So I want you just to kind of try to put that together. The stepping into your legs and your feet and your big toes, and the action of keeping the outer upper arms down to the floor. So do 5 or more and make sure you're all set up before you start, that you feel like you're in place. Rotate those palms out as well as you can and start on an exhale, stepping into your feet and really trying to keep the outer upper arms down. The big toes really pressing down. If you can keep the big toes pressing down, you might feel a softening in the buttocks, which is good. One more. Good. Once you're down, you can take your strap off of your arms. And whatever feels better here, either hugging the legs in, reclining child, or you can do the wide feet and the knees floating side to side. So just find a way to soothe your lower back. You might do both. Good. And now we're going to find our way to side line to come up. We're going to work on Ustrasana. Move the strap aside. If you need a blanket to kneel on, you can use that. So one of the reasons this pose feels either uncomfortable or limited or out of control is because the head flies back. So we're going to prevent that. That's the first thing we're going to do is we're going to clasp the head and create kind of a safety net of support for the head. Also a way to press your head into something with support. Otherwise the head just tends to fall back. But before we go, I want you to think about the head and the tailbone working in opposition. So you have an uncomfortable shoulder, Katie? You might do it with one arm if you need to leave the other arm down, if you have an uncomfortable shoulder. But think about the head and the tailbone working in opposition. So however much the head goes back, the tailbone has to move forward. So when you aren't clasping your head, you can remember that if your tailbone can't move forward 5 inches, then your head shouldn't move back 5 inches, okay? So on the exhales, you're gonna be moving back, but really press your head into your hands and really press your tailbone toward the front body. Inhale to come up. Keep kind of spreading the elbows back. Okay. 3 more here. Last one. When you're upright, if it's comfortable, sit directly down on your heels. If it's not, you can sit on a bolster. You can find another way to soothe yourself. You might sit forward in child's pose. So just take a moment here to let that go. We are going to do several things here. As you feel ready, you can come back up. Okay, so bring your attention back to your small toes. You can even look back there. For most of us, we see small toes uprooted, big toes kind of being crashing down. So arrange the feet so that your small toes are just as significant. You have small toe pressure down. And then see if you can think about your thighs rotating back. And if you need a little assistance, I find it's kind of sometimes useful to grab my pants and pull the fabric of my pants back and out. So if you don't want to do that, you can even just grab your thighs with your hands and just kind of spread, or you could use a strap around your waist, and it's a lot of futzing, but you could take the strap through the thighs and pull on the strap if you prefer. We're trying to bring attention to small toes down and inner thighs rolling back and spreading out. So however you can achieve that, here we go. Exhale, inhale. So in all of our yoga poses, as we kind of bring these experiences to the body, our work is to restore a sense of equanimity. So as we back bend, we want to kind of keep things equalized. We don't want to feel out of control. We don't want to feel distorted. We don't want to feel like we are bringing too much in one direction. Okay, do 2 more. One more. And then however you can relieve yourself, either child's pose or Vajrasana, which is thunderbolt, just sitting directly down on your heels, or propping. Just find a way to quiet down. We're doing lots of repetitions today, so we want to make sure we're taking time to soothe the nervous system and soothe the body. Okay, so we're going to do 2 more experiences with Ustrasana, with camel pose. And then maybe let's try just kind of putting as much of it together as we can remember. So the next thing I want you to come back to is thinking about, when we go backwards, the blasting feeling of the abdomen, the rib cage. We want to equalize that. So sometimes you need to come back to kind of the wrong experience to know how to correct. So the first couple you might take just kind of sensing what happens here in the midsection. We tend to kind of push, we tend to spread. So I want you to counter that. When you come back, I want you to engage the abdomen toward the back body and pull it together, course it like it's particle board. Everything's kind of moving toward midline and back. Okay, so with that idea, 5 exhalations. And maybe it's not as deep as you could go, but hopefully it's feeling cleaner and better and more positive. Sometimes in back bends, we're like, oh no, it's back bending week again. It's terrible. And hopefully we can learn to love it and befriend it when we have these wise actions. Okay, last one. And next time you come up, find a way to support yourself, just soothing your nervous system. You can fold forward. You might take Vajrasana again, just a few moments. Okay, so we'll do one more kind of target to the low back now. I'm going to have you take your fists, kind of push on your either side of your tailbone, your sacrum, and just clamp the elbows together a little bit. So we're giving the low back nice support here, but we're also going to play with our gaze. So as we know, probably from doing back bends, it's so seductive. We have energy flying up that usually our eyes roll up and we get tension in the face and head. So as you do your 5 with low back support, with the knuckles into your back, I want you to actually close your eyes and look toward your cheeks, okay? So you're gonna do 5 in a row, pushing on your low back, closing your eyes and looking toward your cheeks. So in other words, away from your brain, or looking down is another way to say it. Okay, coming up by lifting through the top of the head. And when you come out of that last one, go ahead and find your way to resting. We are, like I said, going to try to put as much of this together as we can. I'll try to remind us of those key points. Okay, so just recalling what we just kind of went through, the head support, the tailbone and crown working in opposition, the abdomen not blasting open, lower back support, and gaze looking down, small toes pressing down, inner thighs rolling back. Okay, so we'll take the hands to the hips, squeeze the elbows in, and begin when you're ready on the exhalation. So try to move at the speed of presence, move with total awareness of as many of those points as you can. Try to feel your head with that support, even though those hands are no longer there. Try to lower your gaze, even though the desire is for the gaze to go up. Anchor into your small toes. Drive the inner thighs back. Compact your front body to support your lower back. The thumbs pressing on your back right now, use them to keep your lower back feeling supported. Wonderful. These look really good from my view. These all look lovely. All of you guys do. So next time you come up, one last time, either child's pose, Vajrasana, whatever is soothing, and just let it go. Okay, and as you're ready, you can make your way up to standing for the crescent pose. Ooh, just fell backwards there. Okay, so let's take a moment in mountain pose. Tilt the camera slightly here, but keep your feet wide, so hip distance, as they're going to be for this crescent pose. And just arrange yourself, shoulders above hips, hips in line with heels. Your feet are balanced. You're taking the tailbone into the body, finding neutral with your pelvic bowl tilt. And see if you can take a few breaths, just kind of floating your rib cage higher, which is something we're going to play with, and floating your skull higher. Meanwhile, firming your legs and anchoring into your feet. And if there's tension in the buttocks, see what you can do to release that. Rolling the inner thighs back might help. Good. So as we know, this pose is in all of our standing poses. So hopefully you have a good imprint of Tadasana. So the first piece we're going to do is repeat the clasping, because this pose is very similar to camel pose. So we're going to clasp the head, and again, feel the support that creates. It's also preventing the head from falling back or throwing back. And we're going to try to move the tailbone and crown in opposition. So equal and opposite movement. So big in-breath. On your exhale, push your head into your hands and take the tailbone forward. Inhale, come up. And you might by now, because we've done a lot of repetitions, have control of those other wise actions. So feel free to include anything else that you remember, like the inner thighs, the gaze, the legs, the toes, even though we're just kind of bringing attention to these particular points here. 2 more. Good. Inhale to come up. Release your arms down. Resting Uttanasana. So even wider if you want, a little bit more roominess for the abdomen, for the low back. And then knees bend, because it's not a hamstring day. And we're really going to try to soothe the back here. Dangle your arms or catch the elbows if that's a more supportive position. The skull dangles from the spine like a big bowling ball, helping the spine surrender in this reverse flow, break from gravity. Good. And now go ahead and find your way up. Use your stomach muscles to help you come up. We're going to grab the rib cage. Okay, so we just did mountain pose, thinking about the rib cage floating a little higher from the pelvis. So when we go backwards, we tend to kind of telescope the space of the torso. So I want you to keep a sense of spaciousness as you lengthen back. So you're actually going to be squeezing and lifting your rib cage. So Vern, your hands look a little low. Are you on your rib cage? Maybe I'm seeing it wrong. Okay. So you're holding it, like corseting it, and you're lifting. Okay, exhale, go back. Don't do your deepest back bend. Just try to see if this frees up any of that pinching that you might experience in a back bend. I know I do, it's not everybody, but this lifting can really help give the lower back some support. And of course, we wouldn't be holding our rib cage, but you're teaching your body how to create that action when you go into back bends. 2 more. Last one. Good. When you come up, let that go. You might need to shake your wrists out a little bit. Resting Uttanasana. Little knee bend, dangling, head hanging, maybe catching elbows, whatever it is for you. Let's take 5 good long exhales here. Okay, now come up. Legs and feet. So your stance is still wide. Toes, they want to be really pressurized into the floor. Legs are firm, inner thighs are rolling back. So we're going to bring awareness to that. At the same time, we're bringing awareness to shoulders. I'm going to have you take your hands out, palms face forward. If you remember this pose, eventually we have the hands clasping, not clasping, we have the hands in prayer pose above the head. But what we're gonna do here is train the shoulders to sit back so that when we do bring the arms up, they don't just curl forward. Okay, so it's like a Shavasana arm. So stamp into your legs and feet. Tilt the pinkies slightly more forward than the thumbs. Exhale, angle back. Use your legs and keep your shoulders in external rotation. Thighs rolling back. You're doing 5. Watch those eyes, don't go rolling up in the head. Good. Use those pinkies, bring them forward any amount. Good. 1 more. Wonderful. All right, shake it loose. We'll do 1 more experience before we do 1 more resting Uttanasana. We're gonna do the very same thing, but now I want you to also watch for blasting abdomen, blasting rib cage. So you're gonna do 5 more, but now knitting the inner front ribs together and back, and actually moving the abdomen back rather than pushing it forward. So 5, using your legs, using your feet, rolling the inner thighs back, and spiraling those inner upper arms to keep the shoulders where they go. Remember not to throw the head back. Imagine your hands are behind your head and compact your front body to the back body. 2 more. As much of that as you can put together. Wonderful. Last one. Okay. Resting Uttanasana. Knees bend, arms dangle, head dangles. Maybe grab the elbows, maybe rock. Whatever is soothing. And we're going to find our way up to see if we can take 5 with the arms overhead in Urdhva Namaskarasana, upward prayer. So bring the arms up. Actually start with your Shavasana arm, sorry. Thank you. Get the shoulders where you want them to be, remind them. Then take your arms level with the floor, keeping that shoulder action. Now maintain that shoulder action as you bring the arms overhead and press the hands together. Hopefully you can keep some of that nice feeling of openness in your shoulders. Okay, so putting it all together, 5 exhales. Pull the front body to the back body, support the sacrum moving forward, have the crown and tailbone working in opposition. Keep the gaze soft toward the cheeks. Use the power of your legs and feet. Inner thighs rolling back. 1 more to go. Good. Go ahead and release your arms down. And you're going to make your way into Child's Pose. We're going to take a couple minutes in child's pose. Make it your own. So again, you don't have to have your arms stretching forward. You could support your head with your hands or another prop. You might be supporting where your buttocks and your heels don't connect. You might fill that in with some propping. So the idea is that we're only as strong as our weakest link. So if we can suss out these weak parts in our poses, we can start to make those weak parts actually the strongest part of our pose, the driver. And we can engage the wise actions around what feels limiting in the pose. We're going to take another minute or so in prone Shavasana, which is a really nice way to come down from a back bending practice. So we're going to have elevation across the line of the hips, but it's going to be a little bit more substantial than you would use for like a cobra. So you might put 1 or 2 blankets, just needs to fit along the hip line. And then you're going to rest as if you're in Shavasana. So your hands come down, your feet are wider than your hips. You're resting on a cheek though, because of course we don't want to suffocate. And so whatever cheek you're resting on, we'll switch in just a while so that we can have both sides. And let your other cheek now rest on the floor. So try to be on the tops of your feet. We don't want to be on the inner feet, which is shortening for the low back. So be on the tops of your feet, kind of rolling out toward the small toes. And with the next 5 inhales, let the stomach pressing against the blankets push some breath into the lower back. You can start to move your hands forward. We're going to be finding our way onto our backs. If you'd like head support, use a blanket. We're going to come into a supine twist. Twisting is always a good idea after back bending practice also, to help kind of down regulate the nervous system. So once you're on your back, stretch your arms out to each side. We'll cross the left leg over the right leg first, just because for the camera angle I'm facing, it's easier. And shift onto your right hip. Let your legs fall to the right. Try to keep the knee close to the shoulder line rather than farther. So even though it's probably still a couple feet away, just draw the legs toward your shoulder line. place your right hand over your top leg. And rather than forcing your left ribs back to the floor, just kind of imagine them oozing back to the floor with each exhalation. And you can look up or you can look sideways off to the left, but close your eyes just to make it a little bit more quieting. Do your best to release all effort from your legs. Moving from the outermost layer of your legs to the innermost. And then come onto your back slowly. Uncross your legs slowly. Rearrange yourself, center yourself on your mat, and draw your legs in. You're going to hold kind of the outer knees. And keep your knees about fist distance apart. And take a couple moments just pressing the outer knees into your hands. And go ahead and step the feet down. Stretch your arms wide. And cross your right leg over your left leg. And then shift to your left hip. Stack your right hip above. We're looking for kind of a vertical sacrum here. Pull the legs in toward the shoulder line as much as you can. Use your left hand to support the legs, kind of settling in. Just place the weight of the hand there. Start to relax the right ribs toward the floor. Either looking up or off to the right. Close the eyes. You can find a little more surrender in the right shoulder, taking the right palm up. And just let the shape and gravity and breath take over. Bringing attention back to the legs and finding as much ease, effortlessness as you can. Just like the legs and the power of the legs amplifies the back bend, the surrendered legs really amplify a surrendered spine. And as you're ready, you're going to make your way back to center. And now preparing for final resting pose, you're going to, first of all, take any other movements your body is asking for, addressing those kind of physical longings that want to come through before our pose of stillness and effortlessness. And then make sure you're going to be warm enough. Turn off any overhead lights that might bother you or keep you kind of in the outer world. We know back bending week comes before restorative week, and even though the postures are very stimulating, we are starting to kind of move the awareness to the back brain, which is a quieting effect. So we can have a really nice, let's see, 5-minute Shavasana here. Also, after we do a lot of effort and vigorous activity, we're more receptive to rest. Restlessness has kind of been addressed. So make your way into Shavasana. Give yourself any support you need, especially if your lower back needs a little bit more. If it's tender now, just taking some support behind the knees. Letting the big toes fall out toward the small toes. And arranging the arms in a way that you're bringing your thumbs down so they're sitting just as low as the pinkies. Once you set up the shape of the pose, then start to scan your body and just kind of sending out that all points bulletin of surrender, of letting go. Meeting the floor and then continuing, kind of merging with the floor so you feel like you don't stop where the floor begins. That oozing idea. A quiet gaze looking down toward your cheeks, the softness around the sense organs that live on your face. Finding a little bit more spaciousness inside the mouth. Witnessing the rhythm of your breathing. Shavasana is to the brain what sleep is to the body. Different than sleep, we remain hyper-conscious. So just continue to breathe, relax, feel, watch. And most importantly, allow. Just being with whatever is. Holding steady, just like you do in your poses. Hear the thought waves, the emotions might throw you. Just notice and let them pass. Just a couple deep breaths with a visualization. So as you breathe in, you're breathing from your feet to your crown, but you're going to imagine you're breathing like a dome above your body, from the feet, kind of up over your body and down to the crown. That's the in breath. And then exhale from the crown to the feet, but as if there's a mirror image of that dome coming underneath you. This kind of orbital breathing. Inhale from the feet to the crown over the body. Exhale from the crown to the feet beneath the body. And after the next exhalation, just come back to automatic breathing. Just witnessing for a few more moments here. Showing up fully. And then just start to invite very simple movement in, restoring our physical body, sensing, awareness. Moving fingers, toes, the lower limbs, the head, the neck, knees and elbows. Taking the hands onto your chest or your belly. And easing yourself to one side of your body. And then pressing your hands into the floor. Bring yourself up. Let your head come up last. And once you're sitting upright, just arrange yourself in Sukhasana. Joining the hands together in front of the heart. Lifting the corners of the mouth, finding a sense of gratitude. Sometimes we have to lift the corners of the mouth to help us into that state of feeling grateful. Sometimes it's already there. So let's take a deep breath in through the nose and let it go. From the place within me that I know to be divine, I honor that place within each of you. Namaste. All right. Thank you all for being here today. We'll do more on Friday. It'll be a little different, but kind of the same theme. So see you soon. Bye.